Morning, all of my students. So, dear students, in the last class, we started our revision class on the story of Grace Darling. And, student, in the last class itself, we have finished almost the half of the story. And after that, students, today we are proceeding towards starting the rest portion of the story. So students, at first, let me read out the left out part for all of you. In a few minutes, they were ready. They set off in a heavy lighthouse boat. Their boat was tossed like an eggshell on the heavy sea. Grace pulled one oar and her father the other. It was hard rowing against such a sea, and it seemed as though they would never reach the place. But Grace had gained immense strength by her rowing and swimming. So she guided her boat straight towards the wreck. At last they were close to the rocks, but they were in greater danger than before. The fierce waves broke against the boat, and it would have been dashed to pieces had it not been for the strength and skill of the brave girl. One by one, they helped the worn out crew on board. Once again, with strong hands, they grasped the oars and rowed back safely to the lighthouse. Grace and her mother tended to the injured. Grace proved to be as tender as a nurse, just as her mother tended to the injured. She cared most kindly for the shipwrecked men until the storm had died away and they were strong enough to go to their own houses. It was not long before people in other parts of England heard of the brave deed. Grace Darling became a national hero. She won an award for her courage. Many letters and beautiful medals in remembrance of her bravery were sent to her. But she received them very quietly, saying that she had only done what she ought to do, and what anyone with her strength ought to have done. All this happened a long time ago, but the name of Grace Darling will never be forgotten. She lies buried now in a little churchyard by the sea, not far from her old home. Every year, many people go there to see her grave, and there a monument has been placed in honor of the brave girl. It is not a large monument, but it is one that speaks of the noble deed which made Grace Darling famous. It is a figure carved in stone of a woman lying at rest, with a boat's oar held tight in her right hand. So, students, this is the end of the story. So, now let me give you the short summary of the rest of the part that we have read today. So, in the last class, we got to know that at last Grace got succeed in making her father agree to help those drowning people. Now they set off in the lighthouse boat to help those people. Grace held one oar and her father the other. It was really hard to row against such a dangerous sea, but at last they reached the wreck, and then they helped the travelers to got on their boat. And it was only because of Grace's skill of swimming and rowing that helped her to enable to save those shipwrecked people. Again, after picking up those people in their boat, once again they hold the oars in their hands and started rowing against the sea storm towards the lighthouse. And at last, after rowing for some time, they rowed back safely to the lighthouse. After reaching the lighthouse, Grace and her mother they tended to the injured people, and she became a good nurse for all of them. Just like a brave sailor that she became last night. She carried the people and until the storm had died completely away and the injuries of the people were healed. Then only the grace led those people to go back to their own houses. Then, after few days, this great and brave deed of Grace Darling spread across the other parts of England. Soon, Grace Darling became a national hero. She even won an award for her bravery. She received a lot of medals and letters for her brave deed, but she received those awards very simply, and she told that it was her duty to save those poor people. She also added that anyone with her strength would have done the same thing that she did. And all this thing happened many years ago. Now Grace Darling is dead. She is no more alive. But people will never forget her name. And after her death, she was buried in a little churchyard by the sea. And this place was not far from her old house. And a monument was built in her honor on her grave. Every year, people used to visit her grave in order to pay tribute to her brave deed. And this monument of Grace Darling, it consists of a figure of a woman carved in a stone lying at rest with a boat's oar held tight in her right hand. So student, I hope that you have understood, and I know that all of you will appreciate the great deed that Grace Darling had done. And Grace Darling just did this because she thought that it was her duty to save those shipwrecked people. So students, it is also our duty to help people in problems. in difficult situations. So whenever students you get people in difficulty and you are able to help them, so please do this. Now student, these are the few main words that are difficult from this last part of the story, and these words are: number 1, toss, which means throw. Number 2, fierce, which means dangerous. Then 3 is dashed, which means to beat against a surface. And number D, grasp, which means seize and hold firmly. So student, this much only we will discuss today. Again tomorrow we shall discuss the other important points which are related to the story. So student, this is the end of the story. Thank you so much.